What's up, softball parents? I'm Coach Dan Blewett. In today's video, let's talk about 5 ways you can help your kids long-term have better resilience, learn more life skills, be more independent, and get more out of their sports career and their professional career when they move on from sports by just doing a couple things and helping them deal with conflicts better, be more independent, all that stuff on the softball field. All right, so if you're new here, I did this. I had a baseball and softball academy for a long time, and we had softball teams, we had baseball teams. So I laid down a lot of ground rules between players and parents. And so these 5 items are things that I think are really, really important that will help your kid get ready for not only the real world, but also for every higher level of softball as parents become much more hands-off, or at least should become more hands-off. And as fewer and fewer people are going to intervene and help them find success. Ultimately, your daughter is going to have to be the one who's responsible for her entire career. And so these 5 tips are going to be really helpful. So number 1, do not contact coaches for your kid about playing time or their role or any of that stuff. That's easily handled by your daughter herself. It doesn't matter if she's 10, 11, 12. It's good. It's a good skill to develop for her to say, hey, coach, I'd like to talk to you about the role I'm in or why I'm not playing second base, what I can do to get more playing time. That conversation does not need to be had by the parent. I realize that once in a while it does, but most of the time it does not. It happens way too often today where parents are constantly intervening, not sure why their kid's not playing here, playing there, or getting more bats, getting more pitching time, whatever. But ultimately, it's not your career, it's your daughter's. So she can have these conversations. So what I would recommend is that you explain to your daughter, I'm not going to go talk to your coach. If you're unhappy with what you're doing, or if we as a family are unhappy with the way things are going, then this is what you say. You say, hey, coach, don't start with a why question, start with a what question. Say, what can I do? I'd like to play more third base. I'd like to play more in the outfield, or I'd like to get more innings on the mound. What can I do to make that happen? What can I do to be in a higher pecking order in the depth chart, or to have a better role, or to hit in the 3 hole instead of the 8 hole, whatever it is. But you want to teach your kids as early as you can to talk to adults and to have difficult conversations. And sports are a great, safe place for them to do that. So I'd really encourage you to stop contacting coaches entirely about playing time. Make sure your kids are the first one to do it. If they talk to the coach and they get a very unsatisfactory answer, maybe the coach just blows them off, then sure, step in. But most coaches should be receptive to it, have a discussion. But again, that's a really important skill to learn because at each higher level, high school, college, coaches want to have 0 contact with parents. It's a higher level of the sport. Parents are not involved. They don't need to be involved in that transaction. So the earlier you can prep your daughters for handling this stuff themselves, the better. All right, number 2. So seeking help for their problems. I get these emails all the time through my multiple websites. Concerned, good parents doing research for their kids saying, hey, my daughter needs throwing help, or she needs to run faster, or she's got arm pain. I'm looking for answers. Hey, Coach Dan, blah, blah, blah. My daughter's feeling this, or this is her issue. This is her issue. Once in a while, I get emails from 13-year-olds who say, hey, I really want to improve my batting. What should I do, Coach Dan? I think that's amazing because they're, again, talking to an adult that they don't know, trying to figure out how to solve one of their problems. And that's a really good skill to develop. Those are go-getters that, the young kids that email me. What I don't understand is when parents are emailing me when they could very easily do the research and then hand that off to their kid. So say your kid has arm pain and you're looking for, what in their throwing mechanics might help alleviate their pain. You can do that research and say, oh, and then say, all right, instead of me emailing Dan, I did the research and I found this guy and he seems like he can help us with this question. Hey, sweetheart, I found this guy on the web. I know you've been having arm pain. Maybe you should consider watching some of his videos and you can email him and ask him about your arm. That's an easy way to hand that off. And again, to help build this skill of talking to adults and professionals that can help you with your problems. So many times I get emails from high school parents, college parents, where it's like, especially in college, it's like, why are you emailing me? You have a 19-year-old son or a 19-year-old daughter and you're emailing me about their strength training. Why aren't they emailing me? Do they not care? Are you the one that cares more than your kid does? That happens quite a lot. At some point, your kid has to fail on their own. They have to want to solve their problems on their own. You can't keep solving their problems for them. So if you want to do this research and be helpful, that's perfectly fine. But I would say don't go to the point where you hit send yourself. I would say, I found this person. Here's a couple of videos that you should consider watching. Just put it on your kid's desk and say, this might solve your problem. You should consider reaching out to this person. All right, third one is blaming others and external factors. So obviously on the car ride home, you very well might be frustrated. Your daughter might be frustrated and you're saying, hey, that umpire really cost us the game, or, your teammate really cost us the game, or your coach cost us the game, whatever it is. Those are not good conversations to have. No matter what happened, obviously we know sometimes umpires do cost you the game, but at the same time, that call in the 7th inning that was really critical could have been made null and void and irrelevant if your kid had maybe not struck out in the 5th inning, or maybe not booted that ball in the 3rd inning, right? There's a saying in pro baseball called, if you don't like it, play better. And that's basically saying no matter what happens, there was always something you could have done to improve the outcome. If there was a comparison between two players, like, she got promoted and you didn't, or she's starting and you're not, it's like, well, what could I have done to be so much better than her, where it wouldn't be a comparison, right? Like, you're just not even gonna, like, this one player's never leaving the lineup because they're so much better than everyone else. What could you have done to be so much better than your peers, or to be resilient against umpiring calls? Like, again, a lot of times teams are like, oh man, we made that crucial error and we lost the game in the last inning. It's like, well, you lost the game in the 3rd inning when you had the bases loaded and no one out, and you struck out twice and popped up. If you hadn't done that, that error in the 7th wouldn't have mattered, right? And that's the right mindset to have, because in life, there's so many bad things that happen that are just attributed solely to luck. You get in a car accident. You get laid off because of COVID. You get sick. There's so many things that happen that are completely beyond your control. The more you look inside yourself for answers, again, it's not what happens to you in life, it's how you respond to it. So you just don't want to get on the side where you start to blame all the bad coaching, all the bad, play by teammates, all the bad field conditions, the bad hops, the terrible whatever. All that stuff is irrelevant. The only thing that's really relevant is what your player did well, support them, and what they could do next time. So don't let this be this blame game. It's a really bad habit to get into, and it's a hard habit to get out of once you go down that road. My 4th tip is it's okay to allow your kid to leave the field upset, frustrated, disappointed, whatever. I think a lot of parents today are trying to sort of bumper proof everything, just like when you have a toddler and you put those foam pads on the corner of a table so they don't bump their head. There's a lot of point in humanity where we didn't do that. Like, you grew up in a log cabin in the 1800s, you're going to bump your head on the side of the table and go play with scorpions out in the dirt or whatever, and you're going to be okay for the most part, right? Little kids have to fall and bump their head. They have to touch a hot thing to learn that they don't want to do that in the future. They do all these little things that protects them in the future because they learn what to do in their world. But yet in softball and baseball, all these sports today, it seems like too many parents are trying to bumper everything, where their kids are not allowed to leave the field frustrated or disappointed or sad. And if someone makes them upset, coach, you're calling them and getting in coach's ear or yelling at everyone, trying to burn everything down. It's okay for your kids to be frustrated. It's okay for them to have bad games. It's okay for them to get chewed out. It's okay for them to have conflicts with teammates, with all sorts of people. Not that they want to get in conflict. I'm not advocating for that, but sometimes they'll be upset, and that's okay. That's part of the learning process. It's part of the failure process that they need to ultimately make it in softball. And look, if you need to pad their entire life in softball for them to be successful, they're absolutely not going to make it in college. They probably won't make it to college. But if you have to pad everything for them, it's just not going to work out long term. So ultimately, at some point, you have to just let them go do it, let them fail, let them be sad. If their work ethic isn't where it should be and they're not getting the playing time, that's on them, right? So at some point you have to just let them go do their thing and fail, and that's okay. So just try to be as hands-off as you can, where within reason, and let them do their thing. Let them fail. It's okay. And again, I've gotten too many calls from parents after games when I was still actively coaching, and it's like, you chewed my kid out and now he's upset. It's like, well, I chewed him out because it was the 4th time I had to tell him to do something that he didn't want to do because he was goofing off and not doing what he was supposed to do. Everyone else on the team was acting like a professional and doing what they need to do. I chewed your kid out because he was off task for the 4th time. So it's like, what are we doing here, right? So again, just let them do their thing. Be a little more hands off. And remember, it's okay if they're upset. The last thing is, it's also okay, and you don't want this to happen, but it's okay to get injured. You don't want to ever set the stage for them to get injured. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that I had 2 arm surgeries. I didn't die. I'm much more resilient person today because I had those injuries. I learned that I had to work harder to be healthy. I learned that, I appreciate being healthy. A lot of parents are like uber concerned that their kids are getting hurt, and ultimately you cannot control it. No one can control it. You can control your work ethic, but you as a parent can't control your kid's work ethic. The more you nag them about it, the more they just don't want to hear from you. So ultimately, it's like injuries happen, and you can't prevent those either. And they're not good, and they're going to make you really sad for your kid. Like I have a niece and nephew, and man, they fall down, they start screaming. It makes my little heart break. But at the same time, they're going to be okay. And your kids, if they get injured, they're going to be okay, and they're going to learn a lot from it. So obviously, you don't want that. You want to do everything you can to help them stay healthy. But ultimately, it's going to be luck, good or bad luck, that they stay healthy or they get hurt. And it's just going to be part of their learning process. And they're going to be okay. They're going to come back from it. The disappointment will either fuel their fire to be better in the future, or it'll push them towards something that maybe they like better and softball's too much for them. Those are all things that are going to work themselves out. My last tip is just general coddling. So I had a rule in my baseball academy that when the game started, no parents were allowed to communicate with players or bring them anything whatsoever during the game. Obviously, we want to prepare kids for life, and you have at some point have to stop packing their lunches. At some point, you have to stop, waking them up. You have to make them set their own alarm and wake up, because if you do that for their whole life, they're not going to be able to wake up for a job interview in the real world, right? So we had that rule because that was the rule in obviously college baseball and beyond. And I was like, look, I know you're 14, but I'm going to prepare you for real life. You need to be responsible for your checklist of items that you need to get through a baseball game. So if we have 2 games today and it's 96 degrees, you better think real hard before you leave the house about how many Gatorades and waters you need in your cooler and how much ice you need to make it through a game. Obviously, I'm not going to let any player get dehydrated and, have heat stroke. I'm a sensible person, but that was the rule. I'm like, I don't want your parents asking you every 3rd inning, hey, do you need a Gatorade, or sticking Gatorades to the fence. Pack enough Gatorades so that you can make it through the game. It's a very easy thing to do, right? And if you don't have enough for the game, you're going to have to start asking your teammates. Someone's going to get you the water that you need, and then you can go refill your cooler between games of the doubleheader, whatever. But just like little stuff like that. Don't carry their equipment. Make them responsible for as much stuff as they can possibly be, because again, that's all stuff that they'll have to do in the real world. So it's better to start teaching them now in the safe environment of sports. So hopefully this video was helpful. Obviously, I'm not here to lecture anyone. I'm passionate about helping young people prepare for real life and to have better sports careers while they're still in it. And pretty much all of the independence that you give them as parents is going to help them be better in their sport and be better and more resilient in real life. So it's always going to be a win-win for you if you can teach your kids the skills to handle their problems themselves and just be more hands-off and let them sink or swim on their own, because ultimately you're not going to be able to carry them into college softball, and you're not going to be able to carry them into the real world either. You're going to have to show them how to do it and let them try it, let them fail, and then they'll figure it out. Kids are smart. They're resilient. They can do a lot more than I think sometimes even myself as a coach, gives them credit for. And that's a good thing. All right. So if you have any comments or questions, leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.